Oh,
if you
the
fill
feedback.
out a card on your evaluation card, would you write evaluation on that? And that way we'll know the difference and it'll kind of make it go quicker. We won't have to read all of them. If it's a question card, we'll just put that in the orange bowl up here, and then keep your eval card with you, and we'll collect those at the end.
All right, so we'll do question and answers in about 10 minutes, and yeah, we'll convene again then.
I'm gonna warn you. John.
You guys are this question answering?
No.
Okay. But ask it. Okay. You want to put those other books out on that table now too?
Oh,
I think they're.
yeah.
sort of big stuff.
That could be scary. Brought to you by the
this is always the most challenging, but probably the most exciting part too, because everything else we get to prepare for, everything else we get to read some research about, everything else we get to, have a handy dandy PowerPoint slide for, but not this. This is kind of on the fly. So give us some grace in the midst of, I'm going to turn the music down too real fast. No grace for you. A little bit of grace as we maybe fumble through some of these questions, but we will answer them to the best of our abilities, especially not knowing all the specifics of each one. A lot of them have like, well, was this past or present? Is this now or then? And so if we don't answer your question exactly how you're asking it, I apologize, but we'll do our best guess without making you raise your hand. So Karen, what do you got?
All right. This is a question I get quite a bit. Is dirty sex wrong in a Christian relationship, meaning oral or fun positions and anal sex? And I think it goes back to kind of what we've said and said a couple of different ways, and I hope we can continue to say it, is sex in itself is not dirty. It is godly, and it is created by Him. And that's part of a mind shift. That's part of a heart shift of looking to this as this is God's way. He does not speak to oral sex. I think there absolutely is room for that in the relationship. Fun positions, I think you have everything possible that's under the sun. If you are a gymnast, God bless you. Just as long as you don't strain something or break something, or I think what does help us is, I'm going to give you this formula. You have this on the last page of your book, and part of this is guidelines for what is okay in marriage, because I think we all want to know, and a lot of these questions will be answered by this.
Sure.
But is the first one is God clearly said no. The scripture is clear on it's just you guys. It's not anybody else. So that means mentally and or physically. Pretty clear. Nor porneia. The word porneia is what he uses so many times. Sound familiar? And I think there's obvious a reason for that. There's no room for another person. Is it good for us? Does it build up? If you, the reference here to anal sex, and I think we have another one to anal sex. Again, there's not biblical mandate that says no, but there's a lot of relationships where that's just not comfortable. There are anal condoms nowadays, and so there's different things that can make that a little more comfortable. But I think it's really more, again, of a discussion to have, and why? Are we just trying to look for novelty? Are we just trying to do something super different? There are the bacterial ends of it. There's the health reasons and the stretching of the anus, which can be really detrimental and painful. And it's not. I just don't necessarily think it's not a yep or no. It's not. It's really more, I think, of a discussion, and one that you need to look at the heart issue of. I think fun positions are, like I said, whenever you can make it happen. There's some amazing people out there. That's all I got to say. With my mentor, Doug Rosenau, who wrote the Celebration of Sex, said there's really actually only 8 positions. He said people often come in and say, well, there's like 400 positions for sex. I want to try them all. He said, really, there's only like 8 or 9 basic ones. The rest of them have just little pieces to them, like your toes are crossed or your eyes are closed. So,
those are the hardest ones.
Yeah,
I can't keep my toes crossed.
That's what you ought to try, have sex with your eyes open. That's pretty cool. Is masturbation itself wrong without the use of outside stimulation like porn? It's like I said, I think there's a room for masturbation, and I don't think it's sinful. I think it can be. It's not one of those things that's like, yes, no. But pornography obviously adds the third aspect, and so we want to stay away from that. The other thing I think is the question is, does it trigger something? Is it triggering something in you or your spouse? And you really have to give some energy to that. If this is something your spouse is just going, something within me just can't do this or won't do this, we need to honor that. And if that's something as simple as intercourse, then we probably need to do some therapy with that. But the sex toys and all of that kind of thing, there's limits to that for just about everybody. And you can buy every sex toy under the sun, and still miss the point of having good sex. And keep in mind too that sex toys are toys, and your body is nerves. Nerves can get damaged. Damaged nerves are not pleasant. And so vibrators and things like that vibrate and work on the nerve endings that are in your body. And that you can grow a numbness and a dullness because they can be so overstimulated that they start kind of rejecting the activation. So that's a possibility. It's not a probability, but it's a possibility. And I think 4 is it only us? Like I said, there's not any room for anybody else but the two of you. And that's to me are the factors for that.
Yeah. And to speak to the masturbation, I think too, it's what am I asking it to do for me?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Am I asking it to satisfy me? Am I asking it to be in lieu of my spouse because I'm pissed off at them or mad at them? Is it some kind of revenge? Is it out of selfishness? Or is it out of, what am I asking of it? You know what I mean? And where does my mind go in the midst of it? You know what I mean? I think
Right.
is what can be God honoring or not.
Mm-hmm.
So just to add that to that. So I got, what are the impacts that recovery from a porn addiction can have in a marital relationship? So this is one of the questions where, man, I would love more information, but I'll do my best to answer as what I can. So far as, was that porn addiction that was in the midst of this current relationship or one that was before we got together? So I really don't know. But some of the impacts for sure, assuming it was in this current relationship that you're in, there is the rejection that the other person feels, right? The not good enoughness, that something else had to be more satisfying than me, something else, and in addition to me, they needed something else. Also, our brains, they write this stuff down. We remember these images, we remember these scenarios, we remember these, all the ways that it plays out, and our brains are good at remembering, especially novel stuff. So if it's pornography that kind of escalates in its, what's the word I'm looking for? It just gets harder, more hardcore, more intense, or more fringe, you know what I mean? Because I'm looking for more novelty as I go. Your brain's definitely gonna remember the novel stuff, especially. And so those memories don't go away, right? So we can beg for them to go away, we can pray for them to go away, and yet God so chooses to not necessarily let that be an option. I suppose that could happen, you know what I mean? But so now that's in me, what do I do with it? And some of the impacts I think can be, what I need to do is I need to take something that was broken and I need to allow it to be something that draws me to Christ. And absolutely every single one of my weaknesses, which would include maybe a past porn addiction, has the capacity to do that. What was my weakness can very much be the very thing that reminds me to pull into Christ. And so it's really turning what Satan wants to use on top of its head and using it as ammunition to actually draw you to him. And Paul speaks about that. He says how he begged God to take this weakness out of him over and over and over again, this thorn out of his flesh. And God said no. And he said no because in your weakness, my strength is made perfect. Right? And so he may leave these images in your head. He may leave the longing even for the pornography in your head. And it may never go away. That's okay so long as I know what to do with it. And I can flip it and say, I will then let this draw me to Christ. I'll let it be a dash light on my board that says, pull into him. This may never go away, so let it be something that draws you to him. And then for the spouse of that person, again, I guess I'd ask the question of, where do I find my okayness from? Am I finding it in Christ and Christ alone? Because if I am, it's not that I put a stamp of approval on the fact that they were addicted to pornography or that they would use it or they would manipulate me with it. I'm not approving of it and I'm not dismissing it, but I'm not going to allow it to affect me because I don't find my okayness from that.
Yeah, and I think in terms of pornography, especially for women, if it's, although we're seeing many more women who are getting into
You're the
pornography.
fastest growing demographic.
That's
Yeah.
right, 30%. But I think the important part of that is realizing that that's not really about you. And if you can differentiate yourself out of that, it helps to be able to deal with that.
Yep.
That it's not necessarily, I mean, lots of people don't have sex, but don't turn to pornography either. So it's not like you can say, oh, that's only because of that. It's not. Pornography is a self-soothing, it's a self-focused, in this book, Sex in a Broken World, Paul Tripp talks about just becoming your own God, and you're demanding sex in your own way and having your own vision of that, and that how that through masturbation, pornography, and that kind of thing creates that